An old woman sits crooning over a spinning wheel. A professional balladeer sings songs about current events at a crowded market. A poet of old Ireland stands in front of the assembled nobility and renders complex legal judgment. A druid addresses the enemy host and raises the very bones of the earth against them. A young woman wanders through a crowd of shoppers on a busy Saturday afternoon, using the noise of an urban street to raise a protective barrier. A young man creates a bubble of safety and a calm in a shared flat, while an old woman sings to her herbs as she makes potions. What connects all of these things? The magical path known as Draíocht Ceoil, a versatile and powerful tool that connects us to an ancient past while enabling us to navigate the present. So, what exactly is Draíocht Ceoil? Draíocht Ceoil in Irish translates as music magic, but this rather bald definition does it a disservice. A better translation would be sound magic, as it includes words and music, sounds of all kinds, and includes natural as well as man-made sounds. Simply put, it is a practice that uses sound energy to create magical energy. Draíocht Ceoil teaches that magical energy is found in nature, and that this energy can be expressed as sound. Once we learn to hear this, we open ourselves to the power of sound energy. Its basic principles are simple. Tune into magical energy, listen to the energy, then use it to create words or music that will in turn affect magical change. We listen to the bass note of a place and attune to it. Every place, natural or man-made, has its own sound energy. We can take that bass note and change it to alter the energy of the place. Or we can draw on that natural magical energy, create spells using sound, and change this physical reality with our music and words. There are two main first steps in this path. Firstly, we learn deep listening, taking in sound and learning to hear the music around us. This includes the sound of nature, of modern life, of industry and technology, and the music of the cosmos. Then we move to creating and emitting sound, i.e. sending out sound energy to create and shape a new magical reality. This can be used in a variety of ways, from domestic to political, and in Irish traditions and history, there were special forms used for each. There are exercises throughout the book that this is based on, designed to help the reader master both, and to build a strong, consistent practice based on these two important steps. Draíocht Ceoil can be as simple as whistling a tune, or as complex as composing a long poetic spell with full musical accompaniment. It is very easy to adapt to different situations and needs. It is used in healing and protection, in visualization and journeying, in building a spiritual connection to a deity, in addressing injustices both personal or in society. And at its very heart, it is a joyful, musical, poetic practice. It teaches us to both listen and speak, create and admire creativity in others. It encourages us to speak up, sing out loud, dance, embrace noise and movement, and be heard. It has a long history, and understanding its roots is important. It helps us to fully appreciate the tools inherited from early Irish poets and magicians, but it is very much a living tradition that has evolved and adapted to the needs of every era. It remains a vibrant part of modern Irish magical practice, but it can also be applied to many different paths. Some form of Draíocht Ceoil can be found in most cultures, connecting us all just as music and poetry connect us. Music is the great unifier, as any musician knows. If you travel and can sing or play a tune, you will find a welcome everywhere. Origins. As a tradition, Draíocht Ceoil is the perfect example of how Irish culture retained links to the complex and sophisticated culture of early medieval Ireland. From the earliest days of Irish society, music and words were considered magical, delivered to the poet or musician through a special type of inspiration called imbas. The ancestors believed so strongly in the power of sound, they gave special position to those who demonstrated skill in using it. Poets and musicians were part of the elite, and their roles included political and spiritual power. They were courtiers, lawyers, historians, and magicians, as well as entertainers. Even the advent of Christianity could not dislodge them from their privileged status, and they were included in the structures of power. As the old Irish triad puts it, 3 silences that are better than speech: silence during instruction, silence during music, silence during preaching. In other words, music was given as important a status as education or religion. Poets sat at the center of political power, closely mirrored by the master musicians, especially the harpists. They were an elite group able to rebuke kings to their faces, and their anger was greatly feared. They could speak against any powerful figure, negotiate between warring factions, and travel safely into enemy territories. The magical power of music was demonstrated by men and gods alike in sagas and tales. The poets were famous for their complex wordplay, for attributing layers of meaning to many words. This demonstrated their learning, but also enabled them to layer magical intent, raising power from sound energy. Words of power were chosen carefully, each having several different meanings and associations. When delivering a judgment or a speech, their audience hung on and dissected every word, but only another file or poet could really fully understand the hidden magic. They were also keepers of history, memorizing hundreds of stories which they were expected to perform with their own individual flair. Added to this was their role in legitimizing the ruler, or indeed destroying their reputation and honor if they fell short of the ideals of kingship. They had the power to satirize, poems of criticism and censure, or praise, and also a form known as speckled praise, where they pointed out the good in a ruler and then followed it by suggestions as to how they could improve. And all of this occurred in a rich landscape of mythology, spirituality, and culture. It is hard to convey just how embedded music and poetry is in Irish culture, and how its magical power is taken for granted. Folk magic. Echoes of those heady, far-off days when the poets were all-powerful still reach us in these more mundane times. Long centuries of oppression, cultural upheaval, and political unrest changed the structure of Irish society, but the core beliefs endured and evolved. This deep reverence for words and music wrestled the control of the filí, was preserved and utilized by the population, added to existing folk magic, and handed down through generations. The society that supported the poet and magician changed radically in the 17th and 18th centuries. This period saw war, Cromwell, and other disasters, including the forced displacement of the population westward. From that point onwards, we see Draíocht Ceoil emerge as folk magic. Communities that once relied on the poets to perform certain roles now had to find ways to preserve their culture and beliefs, and in many cases the onus fell on women to do so. They memorized songs and tunes to pass on to future generations, and they preserved the traditions of satire and praise, turning them into folk magic charms to hex or heal. They understood how music could link our world to the other world, and how to protect people from the attention of the she and other entities. The origins of these practices were gradually lost over time, but the essence remained. Even as many communities were dismantled and driven on forced marches west to the harsh, less fertile lands of Connaught, women carried the traditions of Old Ireland with them. Under their care, this new version of Draíocht Ceoil thrived. It was so deeply ingrained in Irish culture, it's found its way into 100 tiny charms and pishogues. Pishogues meaning superstitions, charms, or spells. Thanks to its ability to adapt, it remained part of the everyday domestic life of Irish people for centuries. People sang over their work, making up chants and rhymes, manifesting either a good outcome for the work or some piece of good fortune they needed. They sang to coax a good crop or to make medicinal potions work better. They sang to the livestock or recited charms over them. In modern times, these same techniques can be used in a wide range of ways, from connection to natural spots of wild energy to harnessing crowd noise. Our needs have changed a bit. We might be a bit more concerned about getting on with our flatmates or cleansing our workspace than churning the butter, but the basic tools are still the same. It also retained some of its political power, used well into modern times to evoke public spirit, drum up rebellion, and is even now a part of Irish activism and social protest. Modern artists like Kneecap, Chasing Abbey, and Denise Chalia have taken Irish language and music, updated and reshaped it, and made it a tool for activism and philosophical expression again. Music opened a conduit between our world and the other world, the realm of the She and the old gods. Fairy music could lead a traveller astray or be gifted to a talented musician, while great fiddlers and pipers were lured away to entertain the good neighbours. Music was used to heal, to charm, to bless, and to hex, both by ordinary folk and by specialists in the craft. The keen was performed to mark the passing of souls, while rebel songs kept hopes of freedom alive. It became the magical and cultural treasure of the people. As a modern practice, Draíocht Ceoil does not pretend to reconstruct exactly the practices of the filí, although understanding where the tradition originated is an important part of learning to walk this path. This is a living tradition, inherently practical and useful, shaped by necessity and used by people who had limited resources. It is ideally suited for modern life, drawing on the energy around us, and while we often feel the overload of sound pollution in urban areas, it can help us turn that noise into something transformative. Man-made noise brings its own unique energy. Sound magic also helps us in meditation and journeying, as we learn to both hear truth and speak with our authentic voice. Once we understand the underlying principles and can master the basics, our own creativity shapes and informs how we perform the magic. It is both universal and intensely individual. It retains an emphasis on practicalities and is used to cleanse space and create protective bubbles, invite inspiration and help with physical and emotional healing. It is used in easing transitions, including from this life to the next, and the art of keening is used to facilitate grieving. Its great advantage is that it can be as simple as you need or as complex, enabling you to create multi-layered, nuanced spells when called for. No great talent at music or poetry is required. What is required is a love of sound, an intrinsic feeling for it. Sensitivity to sound is an advantage, not a disadvantage in this practice. Many neurodivergent people excel at it because we are very sensitive to sound energy. It draws on stories, on folktales, on songs old and new, on natural and man-made sound, and we layer it into magic. We sing over our work, hum to our plants, and use words like weapons. Battle magic is a part of our work, but so is healing and comfort. And while Draíocht Ceoil is rooted in Irish culture, it can be adapted to any path, which makes it a bridge between cultures rather than a competition. A love of music and poetry unites all indigenous peoples, and like Irish music itself, exploring one leads to another until the practitioner finds themselves on a journey into their own heritage, their own connections. All that is required is a willingness to learn, to listen, and to be open to inspiration. If you want to learn more about Draíocht Ceoil, then please take a look at our book, Draíocht Ceoil by Geraldine Mawkins Byrne, who also provided the words for this video as well as the pronunciation of the word. Thank you. Within us all is the ability to hear the magic of sound, to use music and words to create a new reality. In Irish traditions, this is known as Draíocht Ceoil, music magic, an ancient art deeply rooted in Ireland's mythology and culture, used for generations to harness the power of sound for connecting to natural magical energy. It's available from Moonbooks Publishing. Thank you so much for watching. A special thank you to our members. You too can become a member and gain early access to videos just like this one. Hit the join button for more information. Subscribe for weekly videos, ring the bell for notifications, and we will see you next time.